Here's how you're gonna get what you want this year. Hey y'all, I'm Lisa Zahiya, your business and life coach, and I'm gonna talk about how to get what you want, how to stop doing a bunch of habits that are gonna get in your way, and I'm gonna walk you through how I set my goals for 2025. It is February 4th right now, and I want to be clear that I took all of January to set those goals. So it's not too late. There's not like the year's arbitrary. Set a time right now and you will succeed this year. So let's talk about what we're not going to do. We're not going to do a couple of things. One is we're not going to have 27 goals. Here's my big rule. 1 year, 3 goals. And I'm going to walk you through my 3 goals and how we do that. But if you try to do too much, nothing's going to happen. Second thing is we want a end goal, not a means goal. We know that there's a means to an end. So oftentimes we're focused on the means. How are we going to get there? And I want to focus on the there. So oftentimes people be like, I want to make $10,000 a month. I want to make $100,000 a month. Money is a means to an end. $10,000 to do what? $100,000 to do what? And that's going to help us figure out that big goal. And when the goal, the third rule is we're not going to set boring goals. We're not going to set boring goals that are dictated by other people's expectations of us. Who cares what other people think? What do you actually want? And we're going to make those goals sexy. So we want to make them really beautiful, really enticing. So I'm not going to be like, I want my business to get better. Instead, we're going to be like, I'm going to create this glorious thing that's going to help people do this. And in the meantime, it's going to provide me with this money and it's going to be amazing. So no more boring goals. And finally, we're going to focus more on the input than the output. You put something into a machine, it creates something that's the output. The output is the goal. So, yes, we're going to have goals, but then we're going to track the input. So, if your goal was to be healthier, have a more muscular body, I'm not going to focus on the output of that, which might be a certain weight, a certain size. So I'm going to focus on the input and we're going to track the input. So I have to tell you something. If you exercise every day, something good will happen. It might not be this perfect thing, but will certainly take us towards it. And then if we're tracking what we're doing, we want to see if we need to amplify that goal or not to get closer to it. So we're focusing on the input, not the output. So here's my process and what I did. The first thing I do is I set a vision. Like imagine January 1st next year, a year from now, your birthday. What do you want it to look like? So we want to start with the end in mind. We hear that phrase all the time. But I want to talk about a GPS for a second. You're in the car, you set your GPS. This is the same process. So first of all, we need the GPS to be specific. The end goal, we can't be like, I want to do better. I used to live in New York, and if I said, hey, do you want to visit me? I live in New York City. And you were like, yeah, let's go. And I was like, great, I live in New York. Would you ever find me? No, there's 20 million people. How would you find me? And in fact, even if I gave you the street I lived on, there's 10 apartment buildings with 500 people in it. So you'd have to go through 5,000 people to find me. Instead, I'm going to give you something specific. I live on this block in this building. You walk past the doorman, you give him this code, you go to this floor to this apartment. So we want the end to be specific, just like the GPS. Also, did you know that GPSs work backwards? So if you're driving from North Carolina to New York, the GPS does not start here and figure out how to get to New York. It starts at New York and it goes backwards. Now, let's talk about why. One, if you hit an obstacle, if you're coming backwards, you know you've already been where you want to go. You can go around something. If we go this way, we tend to hit an obstacle and just get stuck. Secondly, is we go to like what we know what those end steps are going to be because they're the ones that are the most familiar. If you start in North Carolina, it doesn't really look like New York, but if I've imagined going through the Holland Tunnel, going over the GW Bridge, it feels like New York, so you can imagine that. So let's apply this. Vision, which is sexy, beautiful, amazing, but doesn't necessarily I wanna have a caveat here is the details make it enticing, but we're not attached to the details. So if I end up with something slightly different than this, but all those inputs have gotten me something great, no problem. But we want to set a clear vision for the GPS. So I set the clear vision. and then I start to go backwards. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to set a clear vision, and then I'm going to think about what inputs do I need backwards. So I want to be stronger. That means I'm going to be deadlifting at the end a couple 100 pounds, a couple 100 kilos. That's a lot, hundreds of kilos. And then I'm going to go backwards. Here's take a walk. Here's take a 20-minute walk, which takes us up to running that mile. So I'm going to take the steps backwards. So they're going to be really specific. So when I imagined the end of my year, here's the things that I thought. I examined without judgment, but with full responsibility, the year I had in 2024. It was good, but there were some things that came up that were in my control. Of course, things happen that were out of our control. We don't worry about those. In fact, for things out of my control, I pay attention to it. If I need to do something about it, I will, but I don't sit in it because I can't control it. So I look at 24. I don't judge myself, but I do take responsibility for everything that happened. Then I look here and I think, what do I want to change? So for me, I have three goals. One is related to business and again, means to an end. So I didn't say I want to hit a certain financial number. I picked the financial number, or I picked a goal that is paying off some debt. Um, I've created some things, and this is what it's going to feel and look like. And then I've used math to figure out how much money I need to be able to do that. So here's my business goal. Here's what I'm going to create. The second one is somewhat of a personal goal. I'm interested in working. I've enjoyed the work I've had in the Middle East. So is proficiency in Arabic. So I defined what that means, being able to have full conversations. December 31st makes me sweat a little bit. And then I worked backwards. So like right now, my goal for this week is 20 new verbs. So I'm working boo, 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 boo. And this is one of the things I need to be conversational. Then my third goal is personal, which is to develop a community, friends, who's around me to enhance some of the relationships I have. And I've written this in a very specific way. So I've got my three goals. So I made a beautiful vision. I wrote my goals and then I made them more exciting. I added amazing adjectives. And then I went backwards from that and I said from the location I want to be to where I am now, which I've gotten very clear, like how much money do I actually have? How much Arabic do I actually know? What does this community look like right now? I worked backwards. So I wrote the steps from the top to the bottom. So I want to talk about the power of three, but before I do that, oftentimes people will be like, but Lisa, I don't, I have more than three goals. We can have supportive goals, or we can have things that fit in there. But the other thing I want to say is you're going to have to give some things up to get these three goals. So within that, like I doing a lot of fitness. Fitness is actually something that supports my ability to just exist as a human, how I eat, da da da. So I don't have goals around that. I have that as part of my vision. You can have supporting habits. So what do? I do the first thing I do is I take my year and I map out what's happening. So when am I going to be on vacation? When am I going to be away? Because what you don't want to do is just split the year into the quarters and be like, if you're like, I want to make $120,000, I don't want to be like 30,000 Q1, 30,000 Q2, 30,000, 30,000. I want to think like, when am I going to offer what that could add up to that? And what do I need to build to? And maybe I'm making most of the money at the end. Or maybe I take off all of December. This is what that's going to look like. So you want to think about that. So the first thing I do is map out the year. The second thing I do is for every quarter, so then I plan Q1, I have three goals. And those three goals are determined by these three goals. So it's not necessarily one goal for each one of them. It depends what's going to happen. For me, it was mostly about setting up the business because I was doing a lot of business education in January, and then Arabic. So I had my three goals, and I know the community is going to start in the spring as I get settled. So I've got three goals for the quarter. And then I set out markers for each, and I do the same thing, go through the quarter. When am I going to be traveling? When am I going to be away? When am I going to work on this? Three goals for the quarter. And then I use those three goals to determine three goals for the month. And then I use those 3 goals to determine 3 goals to work towards for the week. And all of those goals determine my inputs. So my goal for this week is 20 new verbs in Arabic with conjugation. So here's my goal. And then I front load it. I pick them Monday and Tuesday, and then I start practicing them. The practice is the input. That's the important part. So that's it. 1 year, 3 goals, how to actually get what you want. A reminder to go back and really let go of other people's expectations, to really look at the year before kindly to yourself, and can't wait to hear what you think. Put any questions below, please subscribe. And once again, Lisa Zahiya, your life and business coach. If I can support you, let me know.